setting some ambitious goals to eradicate poverty, and helping us provide a little bit of insight is Emira Woods. She's an independent consultant and member of Africans Rising for Justice, Peace, and Dignity. Welcome. You just heard that. They had like 133 poverty reduction seminars. It's almost breathtaking what they're trying to accomplish here. Talk to me about perhaps what the African continent can learn from what China has done in lifting so many people out of poverty.
Well, I think there's a long way to go across the world in terms of poverty, right? We have still too many people without enough food on the table to feed their children at night, too many people without housing, without opportunities for school and an improvement of their lives. So I think what is at stake here is lifting up the majority of people, not only in Africa, but around the planet. And so this conference, like many conferences, has brought a lot of talk, has brought a lot of visioning in terms of what is needed to actually lift people out of poverty. But clearly, what beyond words would be needed is actual policy change to say there must be attention to manufacturing, adding value to the resources of the African continent, so often kind of put on a ship and sent elsewhere. Those resources have to add value in terms of manufacturing in order to have higher wages, better paying jobs, opportunities for people to actually make themselves and for future generations. This is what is at stake right now.
And one of the participants said it, I was listening to them say that we don't want charity, we don't want handouts, we want an opportunity to do exactly as you're describing. Does the Belt and Road Initiative provide that in some respects?
Well, I think there's an opportunity to kind of link different parts of the world. That's what the vision of the Belt and Road Initiative is about. But there's a lot of infrastructure that's being built in Africa right now. And I think there's still concern as to, are there too many debts being incurred to actually build this infrastructure? And to what extent can there be a way to kind of not have a continuous cycle of incurring debt for future generations that then cripples economies now and into the future? So I think there's got to be a way that you add value to resources through manufacturing, do infrastructure development that actually helps to build without necessarily crippling the economies for the future, and pay attention to those basics, having trade unions that represent workers, paying attention to environmental concerns with manufacturing and other processes. These are the ways that you build economies that actually meet the needs of those at the very bottom. And ultimately, that's what poverty reduction is all about.
There was a great book that came out a couple of years ago, Crossroads, Women Coming of Age in Today's Uganda. And it was a series of essays. I spoke to one of the authors of one of the essays, and it was her story about going to work for an NGA that was coming in and was going to help lift everybody up. And she'd go to these meetings, and they'd never ask her. She lived there. What do you think about this? It was a bunch of people from the West coming with kind of this kind of rote idea of how they were going to fix everything. Talk to me about that level of engagement, because I know that's got to be a frustration on the continent, because that's not just one story. There's lots of stories like that.
Well, for far too long, decisions on the continent are being made by people external to the continent. It is people interested in Africa's vast resources, from the oil, gas, mining, now in liquefied natural gas. It's interest in those resources that brings everyone to the continent. But yet those on whose land those resources lie don't end up benefiting. So the issue around adding value to resources is making sure that people in those communities actually benefit, that future generations are also able to benefit from these resources. That ultimately is what's needed to actually bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots, both in Africa and around the world.
Yeah, it's a very good lesson for all of us. Amira, always a delight talking to you. Thanks so much for coming in.